Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how you can influence deer movement on your property by creating your own trails to help encourage the deer to move right by your stand locations, increasing the chance that you're going to have shot opportunities. Now, we have made videos in the past on creating your own deer trails, travel corridors, steering tunnels, sidewalks, whatever you want to call them. And if after watching this video you do want to see more examples of how we create deer trails on our property, definitely check out those videos. But a few days ago, we did just create another deer trail through our property. So once again, I kind of just wanted to show you guys the what, the where, the why, and the how to creating these deer trails. Now again, we did just create this trail a few days ago, and while we do have a camera hung up, the deer haven't really had a whole lot of time to use the trail yet, so most of the B-roll footage that you're going to be seeing in this video of deer using the deer trails we've made in the past are going to be from other deer trails, not this one. But let's start out by talking about what exactly we were doing when we were creating a deer trail in this location. And there's going to be different types of deer trails depending on the type of habitat that you have. This particular location, we are carving a deer trail through relatively thick cover. If you can see behind me, it's not really open hardwoods. We have a lot of stems in here. A lot of it is early successional growth. We have some elderberries, we have some young beech, and we have a lot of multiflora rose here as well. So this is going to be one of the easier deer trails that you can create on your property to influence the movement, and that's if you're trying to carve the trail through thicker cover. Prior to cutting this trail through the thick cover, through that nasty multiflora rose, it was very difficult for me to walk the path that I want these deer to walk. And there was no way that I would be walking that path if I wasn't trying to film the before shot for you guys for this video. Now that we've cleared it out, it's pretty easy to walk from this spot all the way to the other end of the trail. As you can see in the video, my kids have no problem walking up and down this trail. Well, prior to cutting the trail, there was absolutely no way that they were going to walk through any of this stuff. So that's basically what we're doing. If you want to break it down to the simplest terms, we're just carving a path through this thick cover from point A to point B. Now let's talk about why we're even taking the time to carve these trails through the thick cover. Now, the deer on our property will absolutely still use this area, whether or not we make this trail or not. This thick cover, this multiflora rose, doesn't really bother the deer like it does us. They will still move through this area regardless. However, they still do kind of need to wiggle their way through this area, ducking or jumping over obstacles that are in their way. So by creating a nice, easy path from point A to point B, you're really going to increase the likelihood that they're going to take that trail. If you have an area on your property that has thicker cover, you can really influence how deer move from point A to point B by carving a trail through that cover. But you don't just want to cut these trails anywhere. Because you're trying to encourage deer to take certain paths over others, you want to take advantage of this, and you want to try to influence the deer to move right by your stand locations. So now let's talk about where we have this particular deer trail leading. Right next to me, we have a perennial scrape that is on the side of our clover trail. Behind the camera, our clover trail is running north to south. And behind me, up on a hilltop, we have one of our bedding areas. So we have this trail is kind of carved through this thick cover, leading from that bedding area right to this perennial scrape. And about 25 yards away from this scrape along our property line is one of our stand locations looking into this spot. And this was already a good stand location. We get a lot of movement as the deer move up and down this clover trail. We have a lot of bedding just behind the camera. But because we're leading this deer trail through the thick cover and having it come out right here at this perennial scrape, we're essentially creating an intersection. And again, just on the other side of the trail, we made sure to make one of the entrances and exits to one of the bedding areas. So again, it kind of completes that X of movement. So we're going to turn what was a pretty good stand location into a great one by creating that X of movement 25 yards from our stand. So now let's talk about how we're actually creating these deer trails. And if you're carving a path through thicker cover, creating the actual trail is fairly easy. And another thing that's really fun about creating these deer trails is this is something that the kids can help out with as well. This is one of my son's favorite things to do. He loves coming out here and helping me create these paths. Depending on what we're doing on our property for habitat work, the kids can't always help out. Especially if we're dropping trees, the kids can't be around for that. But when we're creating these deer paths, this is something that my son really likes to do, and my daughter, who just turned 2, she's starting to get into it now as well. And it's really fun anytime we're able to get the kids involved when we're creating whitetail habitat on our property. But for the most part, when we're creating these trails, the tool that we use the most is just a handsaw. When we're carving through this brush or have to take down a small tree, you really don't need much more than a handsaw. Every once in a while, if you do have a larger tree in the way, you might need to bust out the chainsaw, but for the most part, a chainsaw on this job is going to be overkill, and you can get the work done with a handsaw. You want to make this trail anywhere from 3 to 4 feet wide. You just want to make sure that when you're walking from point A to point B, that you can walk up and down this trail comfortably. And when you are making a trail through thicker cover, over time, it's going to get a little tighter, and that's okay. Again, you just want to make sure that you can walk from point A to point B with no problem. Once we have the trail cut and we can walk up and down it fairly easily, then I like to take a steel garden rake and I like to rake up and down the trail, removing any sticks and debris. This again is going to make it a lot easier for the deer to move up and down this trail, and it's also going to allow them to be much quieter as they try to sneak through your property. The last thing I'll do if I really want to encourage deer to use this trail and at the same time discourage the use of other trails is I will hinge cut trees perpendicular to this trail. So I'll hinge cut a tree to the right, and then I'll walk about 5 to 10 yards and then hinge cut a tree to the left. I'm not going crazy and hinge cutting every single tree along the entire trail, but I am making it inconvenient enough to keep the deer on my path. Once we have the trail completed, we can expect the deer will be using it fairly quickly. Again, we just made this one a few days ago and we already have deer checking it out. And by the time hunting season rolls around, taking this path will become second nature for the deer on this property. And again, we'll have made what was a pretty good stand into a great stand. But guys, it's going to wrap it up for today's video on influencing deer movement through your property by creating your own deer trails. If you guys have any questions on creating your own deer trails, please drop those in the comment section below. I'll get back to those as soon as I can, and we will see you guys in the next video.